We're back. Welcome to the reboot and episode 1 of the Falling Apart podcast. Let's get the niceties out of the way. You're joined by myself, Sam, plus Tom and Jim. Ricardo has sadly died. No, I'm only kidding. He is just on a jolly with work. Tom, how you doing?
I'm not too bad, Sam. It's good to see you after all these years. Jim is in some sort of recording studio because he's taking this very seriously this time, unlike last time where he didn't take it seriously at all.
Jim, any retort to that?
No, not really. I've been petitioning for this for a little while, haven't I? So I'm just very happy that we're back at it.
I mean, you were the one that cancelled it, Jim, weren't you?
No, I think it's probably a good place to start, I'm guessing, isn't it?
I feel like that this is the elephant in the room. So Jim, do you want to explain why we stopped recording the podcast after our drunken Belfast episode way back in, I think it was like November, maybe even before that last year?
Yeah. Well, that was the best episode ever, by the way. No auditing and about 14 pints of Guinness deep each. Yeah, so basically what happened, there's a couple of reasons why we stopped. Number one, we wanted to really focus on promotion, which we achieved. We felt like we were a detriment to the club with the podcast. So we just canned it for a couple of months. No, in all seriousness, what happened is actually I lost my fingertip. We were a bit of background to that story. We were out in Belfast. I think was it the day after the recording, yeah?
I think it was the day off.
It was the day of the recording.
Yeah.
So we watched the Leeds game, and I think, did we draw that one?
Lost 1-0 to Blackburn.
Yeah, we did, yeah, because we also lost that big bet, which was about £3,000, were it? In a 96-minute equaliser for Saints against Newcastle, I think. Anyway, I'm getting away from the story. So later on that night, we carried on. We ended up taking a detour thanks to Sam. And then, yeah, my fingertip was slammed in a door by accident by Ricardo. And about an inch of the fingertip was lobbed off. Cue Ricardo on the floor finding the fingertip. He did find it, actually, but then we ended up in Belfast Royal Infirmary, didn't we?
He did. And if anyone wants to have a picture of said finger being chopped off, please email us hello@thefallingapartpod.com.
Unfortunately, the email address no longer exists, so we only do X or Twitter now. So you can follow us and comment to us and message us. Jim, where can they message us? Because I've actually forgotten the handle myself.
It's a very simple one that hasn't changed. It's @FallingApartPod, all one word.
Hang on. I'm not good. That joke was last series.
That joke died with us with Jim's fingertip.
Championship standard joke, isn't it? We need to up the game a little bit now.
It is.
We do.
It is
Premier
indeed.
League, baby. Premier League.
But yeah, sorry, Sam, I do have fingertip pictures for anyone who wants them. So if you drop us an inbox, I can give you probably 6 weeks worth of progress.
Why ask them to drop an inbox? Why don't you just post it on our Twitter feed and see who comments on it?
Well, because we actually need to talk about the real reason why we actually were suspended from Apple and Spotify for the Belfast podcast that we put out. So we have been trying for the past 6 months to get reinstated, to which Sam has managed to speak to the powers that be and make it happen. So that's why we are back.
I feel like we're playing two truths and a lie now. So I think the other real reason is that editing was a right nightmare. So from now on, you're just going to get the raw, unfiltered take. So there's going to be no slick cuts, no fancy polish, just us as we are.
Well, that's got to be a lie, because I don't think there was any fancy polish.
Fucking hell.
And the only split cut is your forehead.
Right then, should we get into it? So before we dive into the doom and gloom of the season ahead, shall we first look back at the Championship? And Jim, do you want to take us down memory lane?
Yeah, 3/4 way through the season, I think we started to have a little bit of a stumble, didn't we? I think we were all thinking the same thing. Are we going to do the same? Are we going to drop off? We're going to drop back into the playoffs. And then, to be fair, we went on that amazing run in terms of back-to-back wins. And in the end, actually, I think it was it's pretty comfortable, right? I know we didn't win the title till the last game of the season, but overall, I feel like over the course of the season, the majority of it, we just absolutely dominated, didn't we? Especially from a goals scored perspective.
Yeah, I think just a couple of stats to add to that. So 100 points in the season, 29 wins, 13 draws, 4 losses, positive goal difference is 65, which in the end meant we won the league over Burnley. Jim just mentioned the offensive firepower. 95 goals scored. Joel Peru topped the charts with 19, but that was backed up obviously with the defensive rock. So we just conceded 30 goals, which is 0.65 per game, 25 clean sheets thanks to Ilian Melier. So I think all in all, it was very much a team performance, not necessarily just that we were out and out attacking. And we know the way that Farke plays. Definitely in that first season, we felt that he could have probably done a little bit more to get us over the line. But, you know, he showed in his second season that what he believed in and his plan A worked.
Should we go on to highlights of the season? I don't know if there's any kind of memories that stick out for you over the last 12 months. Scotch bonnet, go for it.
Jim, can I just say what was really funny there? Because of your background, you put your hand up, but you know when it blurs, it blurred out your little finger.
I need to take that background off then. I was going to say one of the things straight away that I think was probably not completely season defining, but we may not have won the title without it, was the substitution bringing Rothwell on against Sunderland. When he whipped in them 2 crosses, and I think it was Strike who got both the goals, and we ended up going on to win that game. I feel like that's when it sort of turned for us a little bit.
Yeah, I think we obviously beat Sheffield United comfortably away from home, didn't we? But it was after that we had a bit of a wobble. But Sheffield United also then had a proper wobble and in the end sort of handed it to us, really, didn't we? Because if they'd have continued a bit of form, we might have been in trouble and probably in the playoffs and be sat here. Well, probably wouldn't have been sat here, would we? Because we're taking the glory while we've been in the Premier League, hoping for a few more followers from the Middle East and the continent. You know, as we expand our stadium for many more corporate tickets and have those fly-by supporters that drop in every now and again.
I was speaking to my best mate, and he was telling me about.
Whoa. Sorry, I thought I was your best mate.
Yes, this is ChatGPT, and he was telling me about how to make a podcast successful, and I was talking about it in the context of the Leeds United podcast, and the basic thing it came back with was to say it's gonna, if it's like results are going negative, people will switch off from a podcast. So I think this is the worst time to reboot this podcast because we're about to go to the Premier League, and I think we're going to lose probably about 95% of the games. So our 25 strong listeners are probably going to be 5 by the end of this season. Anyway, that's doom and gloom for season ahead. Let's keep focusing on the championship season. I want player of the season or players of the season from both of you. I'm going to pick on TC first.
I think it's, for me, Jayden Bogle. I thought he had a phenomenal season, and especially towards the end, once he'd settled in, I thought those last 10, 15 games, he was absolutely unplayable. And I know it's going to be a completely different season, like you said, in the Premier League, and his role is going to be completely different to the role that he played in the Championship. He was almost like a right winger, but the assists that he got, the couple of goals that he chipped in with, and his defensive work at times, but I thought he really stepped up to the fore and got stuck in when we really needed somebody. So for me, he was the player of the season.
Jimbo, any advance on Jayden Bogle?
I mean, yeah, that's a great shout, to be fair. I think you're right. When he first joined, we were a little bit concerned about his defending ability, and then he really sort of turned it around. And that's got to be credit to Farke, because I think when we signed him, a lot of people from Sheffield United were also commenting that his defensive was a little bit lacking. But I think I've got to go for Alex Cairns.
Such a dick.
No, I think it's easy to pick the usuals. You could go for a Tanaka, you could go for a Dan James, but I'm probably going to go for Ethan Ampadu. The reason I'm going to go for Ampadu is because I feel like when we were having that wobble, if you remember, Ampadu then had to drop back into defence when Struijk got injured. And Ampadu and Rodon together at the back, I feel like it really solidified the defence. And we actually looked a hell of a lot stronger with him at the back than what we did when we had Rodon and Pask. So I think his impact as a skipper on and off the pitch, and the fact that he helped do that towards the back end of the season, he's my shout. What about
you, Sambo?
Well, no one's mentioned Joel Peru, 19 league goals top scorer. I'd probably go for Ao Tanaka. I think he just completely changed the midfield for me.
So why did you mention Joel Peru?
Because I was just thinking no one's actually mentioned him. He scored the most goals for us. But yeah, Ao Tanaka was probably my player of the season. I think he just was that linchpin in midfield. And who got injured? And this is my memory is shot to business. I should actually say I've had the shits all week. I've lost 7 pounds and I've got no. Should I not say that? Everyone's looking at me funny. We had some injuries, didn't we, at the start of last season with Ampadu and was it Rothwell or Ampadu and someone else, and then Tanaka and Rothwell came in, and basically we all thought it was end of the season, and they came in and completely lifted us back up.
Yeah, it was Gruev, wasn't it, initially, then Ampadu, which then meant Tanaka and Rothwell came. And we said, didn't we, I think everyone was shitting themselves, for want of a better word, Sambo. And, when they came in, Tanaka and Rothwell, we were like, we've got the best centre mid, the second best centre mid, the third best centre mid, and the fourth best centre mid in the Championship. And now, could you tell which one are top, 1 to 4? You probably couldn't. So I think that speaks volumes of what they came in and did. And like Jim said, Rothwell, for a bit part player, after he had that stint in the team, did brilliantly, absolutely brilliantly. He came off the bench, and one thing I like about him that would probably lack a little bit in midfield, which I know we're probably going to come on to in signings, is he gets the ball and he drives forward. Everything he does, he tries to move the ball forward, whether it's passing or those little bursts into space. And I think Rangers are getting themselves a real strong signing.
Yeah, definitely. Last word on this segment, Jim, for you, and I'd like you to do this in Farke's accent if you can. A word for the manager.
Are you taking the piss? Putting me on the spot?
No. This is what the fans want.
I can't do it. But a word on the gaffer. To be fair, I think he's obviously had his doubters. There were question marks around. You could pretty much put your mortgage on your substitutions had come on the 70th minute, right? So you could pretty much guarantee that was going to happen. But what you've got to think back to is the likes of Tanaka. He was a signing that Farke had earmarked the season before. We're seeing it now with some of the signings that have already come over the line that we started doing this in January. And you've got to give him credit. I mean, what is it? 2 seasons in a row, both seasons close to 100 points. How can you knock that? Despite the knuckle draggers out there who hate him for some strange reason. He's done an amazing job for us. And actually, if you think about what people's arguments are with him, is that he's never cut it in the Premier League. The guy got £9 million worth of investment when he went up in Norwich. I mean, fucking hell. Pep, Klopp, anyone with that sort of investment taking that jump up from Championship to Prem, you've got an L's chance. So,
I mean, with the way the spending's going at the moment, you might have a fucking similar investment.
Again, a brilliant segue, Tom. So we're now going to move on to the transfer window so far. Now, last time version 1 of the podcast, I had my shit rumour segment that everybody told me they fucking hated. This season, though, Jim, aka Scotch Bonnet, I'm not sure why he's called himself Scotch Bonnet on the recording, but he has. No one's going to know that.
Coming in hot.
He's coming in hot with the transfer takes. So Jim, do you want to... Tom's thought of another thought. Let me pass to Tom quickly for his thought.
No, it's not. It's not. It's Jim's background keeps cutting his finger off and he's making me think of Belfast.
It's there. There she is.
There she is. The listeners cannot see your finger, but again, hopefully any DM on X, we will share the gruesome pictures of Jim's. He said an inch. It was probably less than a centimetre of little finger that came on. Anyway, Jim, over to you. Do you want to talk transfers in, out so far, and then we'll come on to rumours?
Yeah, so let's start with Xhaka or Xhaka Bijol, however you want to say it. Obviously, a big old centre back lump. By the way, are we going for like Giants FC this next season coming up? Or I feel like we've not signed anyone under 6'3" so far in the signings that we've done. Which again, we'll touch on that separately. But obviously, Xhaka's a very, very well sought after centre back. Newcastle actually tried coming in and hijacking the deal, didn't they, towards the 11th hour? And I almost feel like it gives us that level of cover at centre half that we may have potentially been missing last year. We can't get away with being that sparse from a defensive point of view in the Premier League. But yeah, I'm not sure what you guys think to him, what your thoughts are overall. Good addition. I feel like it's a brilliant addition, to be honest.
I think what's really hard is, of all the players we've signed, I've got no idea about any of them, but what you would say is the 49ers, the way that they do their transfers and the data behind the transfers, and the fact that Newcastle came in for him probably shows that he's got either the ability or the potential ability to be a Premier League centre-half, because otherwise, a club of Newcastle stature that's been in the Premier League for a number of years wouldn't waste the money on him. So that fills me with a bit of confidence. Other than that, know nothing about him other than that he's a giant. And I think it was something like in Europe, he was in the top 5 or something for aerial duels won. Yeah. So again, shows that he's good in the area. And I don't know if I've read it somewhere or one of you guys have put it in, that we're looking to create a sort of a big, powerful team, because I think we know that we're probably going to be up against it. So to create those dangers from set pieces, as well as being able to defend set pieces in our box and attack the opposition's box, is what we're going for.
I mean, he's got European experience as well, hasn't he? Which is a real big plus. Played at the highest level, a couple of games in the Champions League, Europa League.
I think it's just a statement of intent that they're focusing very closely on defending, which I think is like desperately needed in the Premier League. So I think it's the right statement of intent. I was doing some research ahead of this podcast, because I think I'm the only one that does research before the podcast. Obviously, TC's been dropping in and out of the camera because he's going on to ChatGPT and asking it questions quickly. But I shouldn't say ask, because now you just think I'm asking ChatGPT as well. I asked who our 3 first signings when we returned to the Premier League were in 2020. And if you can guess any of them, I will give you £100.
Rasmus Christensen.
No. Yeah, I'll tell you what, you've got 2 guesses each.
2 each.
No, Tom, TC.
I'm here.
I could see you typing away.
I'm not. Was Firpo one of them?
No. Okay, I'll give you a clue, because it was very disappointing. Oh, TC's got a
Brendan Aronson.
No.
Oh, if Brendan wasn't one of the first, that was pretty much lined up the second we went up. So you've really got me now.
Well, hang on. They weren't like loan signings, were they? That were made permanent.
Correct. There's 2. No. So it was Helder Costa.
Ah, yes.
Okay, now remember him. Ilan Melier. And then Joe Gelhardt. They're quite uninspiring as well, actually. But so I'd say these signings are definitely more inspiring than that. Obviously, 2 of them we had an obligation to buy them, so we didn't have a choice. But yeah, obviously, and focusing on defensive intent, I think, yeah, hopefully they set us up in the spine to try and not concede and ship as many goals as we did under Bielsa in the Premier League.
Yeah. Is it worthwhile we're sticking with defence then, talking about our boy Sebastian Bornauw?
I think so.
Yeah. 7'2". Lovely.
It's not 7'2".
He's 6'3". He's got a fantastic head of hair. Bought him for about 5-6 million, I believe it was. He's so actually one of the things we've not mentioned, and we'll come on to Nmecha in a minute, but agent JG doing an incredible job for us. Basically, he should be taking his salary for scouting for us at the minute with the players that he seems to be getting to come to us. But this lad, so I've read up quite a bit about this guy. And I'm sure Tom's got the stats because his camera will go off in a minute and he'll get them. But he's had a bit of an injury-plagued recent times in terms of playing and the amount of minutes he's had. But I have read up on him that if he can keep fit, and remember we had this with Solomon when we decided to take him on loan. He just spent the previous season, the majority of it out injured, and he ended up being a game changer for us. If he can keep fit, most people that know him, because I don't know a huge amount about him, but they know his potential and how good he is when he's fit. Apparently he's worth 3 or 4 times the fee that we've paid. And it's meant to be a really, really shrewd signing. I guess the big thing is making sure that he stays fit. Cue Tom with his stats, because he's a stat man today.
No stats other than that he's a giant again. I mean, what's going to worry me, and I think about these things, is if we sign another 8 of them and Dan James starts, is he going to feel a little bit like he's vertically challenged?
I mean, he is anyway, isn't he?
Apparently, in real life, he's not that small.
I think he's taller than you, Jim.
It's not very hard.
All right, let's move on to the last of the signings or confirmed signings so far, Jim. Lucas Nmecha.
Yep, so centre forward. Again, Wolfsburg, free transfer for us. So out of contract. Obviously spoke to Gilavogidi about Leeds United. Sorry, there must have been a bit of a internet connection then. It sounded like I skipped a little bit. Meant to be a really good striker, but from what I understand and from what I'm seeing, it's more of a depth signing, and it's almost like a full hit for us because I can't imagine he's going to command a really big wage. We haven't paid anything for him, so if it adds a little bit of depth in that department, I understand we're still going to go out and get an actual proper starting number 9. So I can only see it as a positive thing. Looks like quite a silky player on the ball, but I can't imagine he's going to be leading the line for us from the start.
No, and I think, like you say, it's about adding that strength in depth, isn't it? Because we need options. We can't sort of, like we can in the Championship, when you've got probably the best players in the league, you can patch things, can't you? And drop people into positions that they don't really play in, and put Dan James up front, and probably he can still make a difference there. When we saw in the Premier League that he couldn't do that, and I don't think in the Premier League you can afford to have those pieces of the jigsaw missing. So I think really bolstering the squad is important, and I think one of the things that I would say is positive so far is we haven't sort of added these squad players, as we've said, in terms of the last 2 we've spoken about. Because you'd expect that Bijol would start. The last 2, we haven't broken the bank signing them, so it still leaves that room to go out and really invest in the first team. I think the only thing that I'd say is worrying, and we're sat here today on Wednesday evening, is Sunderland have obviously pipped us to a couple of players that we were after, Diarra being one of them. I'm not sure on the second name, Jim. Good.
Excellent.
Really good, Jim. Appreciate you coming in for that bit there. That's going to stay in the podcast. There's that really awkward mindset.
You've just come. Sorry, it broke up a little bit then. What did he say?
Right. You absolutely threw me off. Anyways, but I think there's 2 things to think about in there. One, is it because they chose Sunderland over Leeds? I don't think so. 2, is it because Sunderland were prepared to pay more than Leeds thought that they were worth? And one thing to mention is how tight with FFP we are, and like the 49ers said, they'll spend every last penny they can up to that point. But with 2 seasons in the Championship and that season in the Premier League, where again we really invested to try and stay in the league and are still paying for that today, those 3 years of PSR, when we've got that in the accounts, we can't afford to go over the line. I think I read somewhere that, although Everton were docked 10 points and then reduced, if any team is seen to really push the boundaries, then it will be a heavy penalty that we'll have to pay, and that could cost us.
Yeah. With the Sunderland thing, it's quite interesting, isn't it? Because the Diarra signing was, if we remember back to when we were talking about Xhaka and Diarra, They were the two names, were they, a few weeks ago that we were heavily linked with. And we actually came out and we did say that the Diarra signing was a lot less likely. What we didn't probably realise at the time was that he was gonna go to Sunderland. Obviously, he played against England. He scored that game. He looked like a cracking signing. Everyone got really excited. But I think you're right. From what I've read and what I've understood, we valued him a hell of a lot lower than what Sunderland did. So it's one of them things. I'd rather we had shrewd owners and we miss out than pay over the odds, because also he has got a relegation clause in his contract with Sunderland. He may turn up and he may not be the player that they thought. He's coming into a brand new league in the Premier League. It's not as though he's proven in this league whatsoever. And then the other one with Sunderland is Noah Sadiq. Now, what's interesting about him is he was just on like a shortlist for us. It's come out that we never actually put a bid forward for him. So there's a lot of noise on the internet that he's another one that we put a bid on and we lost. But actually, I think it's Graham Smythe that's come out and he's said, or Graham Smith, he said that we didn't put a bid in at all. He was just one of the people that were on our shortlist. So, fair play to Sunderland, going out, splashing a lot of cash, but it's a massive risk, right? And what we've got to think about is our squad versus theirs. We've got a hell of a lot better squad than what Sunderland do. So they're going to need to go out and probably pay over the odds because they're going to need to bolster and get a lot more depth.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the big thing to add there is that we knew from the outset when the window opened that we weren't going to spend big before the 1st of July because, as we spoke about, PSR, and that's when the reset is for this fiscal or financial year, as it's accounted for. So I think we'll start to see a bit more money spent. But like Jim said, we don't want to be in a position where we're signing a Brendan Aronson for 30-odd million, Rasmus Christiansen for 15 million, all these players. Because realistically, when we talk about PSR, that first season drop down to the Championship, if we'd recruited right, if we recruited right, we'd have probably stayed in the Premier League. But number two, if we recruited right, we'd have got all the money back for those players and we wouldn't even be talking about PSR in the way that we are today because, Brendan Aronson or the ilk of the player would have gone for the same money at least, if not more, with a couple of seasons in the Premier League. Christiansen would have been the same. All that recruitment was basically we've burnt the money, and like you say, Christensen's gone for a fraction of the price. Robin Koch went on a free, and again, we'll have written that down over his contract, but that just shows, doesn't it, that the likes of Robin Koch, really cost us.
I'm conscious that we're not going to have an awful lot to talk about over the next few weeks other than transfers. So I don't want to do this to death on the first episode back and then not have anything to talk about in future episodes. And also I'm conscious that our favourite chartered accountant is not on to talk PSR or FSP, all of that fun stuff. And I'm sure he'll be shouting at his, I don't even know where you listen to these podcasts on, his phone, his headphones. He's going to be shouting into something that we're talking shit on FFP and PSR and that he really wants to do this better. So
Sam, I can give you some numbers if you want.
No. Let's not bore the listeners to death on the first one back. Let's talk departures now. I think all expected departures. So we had Rothwell and Solomon go back from loan. We've had Joshua Giologi end his contract, and we've also seen the man Junior Firpo leave. I think he's expected to go back to Real Betis. I think they're the only confirmed ones so far. Any surprises? Any others we're expecting to go? Big TC?
I think just on two there, I'm going to pass one of them over to Jim in a second. The first one being Firpo going. I think it was pretty much even a couple of weeks before the season ended. I think there was talk of him maybe not signing a new deal and going off back to Spain. But I think from his goodbye message, which if no one's listened to it, is well worth a listen because it's emotional and heartfelt. He mentioned in there that it wasn't possible for him to stay. Now, there's two things. One, did Leeds offer him a contract? Or two, was it not possible because he needed to move back for family reasons? That's a little bit up in the air. But if it's the first point and we didn't offer him a contract, then it shows that Leeds think that we need to strengthen in the left back position to be competitive in the Premier League. And I think just on that, on the Solomon point, Jim, how do you feel about it? Looks like either he wants to stay or Leeds don't think that they want to pay the money that he's, that Spurs are asking for.
I think with him, it was quite clear that we were willing to go back in and we'd look at purchasing him. But then the change in manager is where this seems to have all been flipped on its head. Obviously, they got rid of Big Ange, who won something in his second season, as he guaranteed he would. And they've brought in Thomas Frank. And he came in straight away, and after a couple of days of being in with them, he said he wanted to give Solomon a chance. So we know based on everything that his partners said previously with Leeds that they've got a lot of friends in London. They were happy in London. They'd like to stay in London, but she convinced him to come to Leeds on loan, which it's almost reignited his career a little bit after a bit of a tricky spell with injuries. So the fact that she were already talking about that doesn't surprise me, that if he's got the opportunity, he's going to stay and try and fight for his position where his friends are down in the big smoke. Shame, but I feel like, we didn't really expect to get Solomon on loan last year. I feel like the board and the scouting network will have plans in place to replace him.
Yep, I'm sure not the last of departures. I think there's a few that we're still expecting to leave the door. I think, you see, what the listeners can't see is that they put their hands up when they want to speak, and they both immediately put their hands up. When I just started speaking, I don't get to say much on these podcasts, and when I just started speaking, they both put their hands up. Jim's doing some sort of weird hand movement, and Tom's just pointing to his chest. I'm going to go to Scotch Bonnet first.
I was just going to say Wobber the Knobber, which is probably what Tom were going to say. He's on his way out. That's pretty much going to be done, dusted. I'd imagine that'll be announced before the weekend. And the interesting thing about that is we're actually going to take a little bit of a loss on him. So Ricardo, for the next pod, it'd be interesting if he could crunch the numbers, because it looks as though we're going to sell him for low single-digit millions, a couple of million by the sounds of it.
I think it's worth though, isn't it?
The question is how long he's got left on his career, because how much have we written down so far? That's going to be...
That's going to be the big thing, yeah. I get it. Yeah. But we'll wait for Ricardo on that, Sam.
Go on then, Tom, your turn.
I think the thing is as well, obviously we're taking a small fee, and like you say, it's a loss in terms of what we paid for him originally, but it depends how much we've written down and, how long he's got left on his contract. I don't know that number, but if that's a year, then obviously the loss won't be as significant in terms of for PSR. The bit that I wanted to add in was maybe not so much Verba, but obviously signing 2 centre halves. Does that mean that we're going to go into the season with the 4 centre halves? Who were the first choice? But one thing that I've seen is that probably Pask might go, and some other players that are sort of homegrown in a way. You won't have seen me there, but I did some inverted commas, because obviously he's not homegrown, but he came through. We bought him very cheap. So in terms of in today's world, he's pure profit. So if we sold Pask, let's say for £20 million, it effectively, over a 5-year contract for a player, will give us £100 million to spend. So that's the same. Again, we sell Joffrey for £3 million. That pays for Bijol over his 5-year contract at £15 million. So I think I could see some of those players that effectively owe us nothing in the books, that we can move on for a few million. Meslier being another one. And I was listening to another podcast and they were saying, would you loan Meslier? Would you loan Joseph? But I think I can see us actually cashing in, rightly or wrongly, on these players, that probably do have an upside in the future. But, we need to stay in the Premier League. And if that means us, having taken a bit of a punt and selling these players that might, go on to make 50, 60 million pounds in future transfers, but keeps us in the Premier League this season, they've got to do what's right.
Yeah, no, agree. What are the kind of next few positions you think we need to hire for? And then Jim, I want you to grab your bollocks and act like Fabrizio Romano and tell us who we're going to sign next, because you seem to be in the know ahead of press, ahead of the club, I think sometimes. So it'd be good to know who we're going to sign next.
All right. Yeah. You want me to go now?
So go for positions first before you grab your bollocks.
from a position perspective, I think the next big one, I know everyone wants a number 9, everyone wants a cam, but I think it's going to be goalkeeper. Now, there's a lad called Lucas Perez. You've heard of him, Brazilian goalkeeper. Plays for Lyon, but they've got the big issue at the minute with what's happening in terms of whether they're going to get relegated or not. I'm not sure if you know the ins and outs of that, but they're going through a bit of a case at the minute to see how that's playing out, which is obviously why that's slightly delaying. But I'd expect goalkeeper potentially to be the next one we hear rumblings over. But Tom, actually, you interestingly mentioned the left back today.
Yeah, sort of murmurs and reports on socials and a few newspapers that Ben Chilwell is a potential left back solution for Leeds. I imagine that'd be on a loan because, again, his salary at Chelsea, he's probably got a 15-year contract and is on £1 million a week. And so I imagine that it would be a loan deal. But again, someone who fits the bill, great attacking, can defend, over 6 foot, all of those things sort of add into the mix of what we're looking for. So, wouldn't be against that signing. But again, as long as he can stay fit, because he has had his injury issues.
And then what do we think?
Goalkeeper and left back.
Oh, yeah, goalkeeper, left back. And then thinking about the lad from Fulham as well. You've obviously all heard about the bids and the fact that they've said they're coming out and they're not gonna sell him. But there is quite strong rumours that we're going to try and go back in for him. And it looks like Fulham have just signed a lad, or they're trying to sign a lad who plays a very similar position.
Yeah.
I'm not sure whether
I think the thing is probably in the pool that we're fishing in, one, there's going to be a few clubs in and around what we're trying to do that'll be doing the same. And 2, it's probably going to take a few dominoes to fall, isn't it, for us to be able to get these players, because we're trying to probably get players that are knocking on the door of a Premier League team, but not quite getting the game time that they need. Ben Chilwell, Muniz, if that's his name, the striker from Fulham. All these type of players that probably ready to play in the Premier League. I know Ben Chilwell has done it for years, so he's a little bit different, but not getting the game time at Chelsea. That Leeds are trying to fish in that pool with, but again, there's probably 7 or 8 teams in the Premier League that are doing the same. So it wouldn't surprise me if, we were hijacked a couple of times, along the way.
Yeah, the player I really want, I know we're focusing on goalkeeper and defensive positions, all for the right reasons, so we don't ship so many goals. But who is the next Rafinha for us? Who's going to be that kind of spark in the Premier League to kind of, like, even when we're playing really shit, to push us forward and try and go get as a late winner?
Jack Harrison?
Not Jack Harrison, I don't think. I'm thinking of the wingers we've got. I don't think any of them are quite at Rafinha's level. I know we were very lucky with Rafinha, but who is going to be that next spark, as I said, to kind of pull us through when we're playing really bad?
I think that's up to the scouting network, isn't it? Because, who knew who Rafinha was before we signed him from Rennes?
I know what you're thinking, Tom. We need Victor Orta back.
Yeah. Could we get him in a little secondment just for this window?
Isn't he jobless as well?
After we've just talked about that we're absolutely fucked for PSR reasons because of it.
Yeah. Cool. Right. I think that's probably us done on transfers for this episode. As I say, there is little to talk about until the preseason friendly start, which I'm guessing must be fairly soon.
I think it's the 19th of July. I think that we play Man United.
Okay, so we've got 2 or 3 weeks of no football, and so we're going to have to pad these episodes out with bullshit rumours from Jim and continue to talk of the woe of the upcoming Premier League season. We're not going to do this to death now, but I know we wanted to come on to a little bit on what's our hopes and aspirations for the Premier League season and what do we think is actually likely to happen. I'm going to put you both on the spot. I want you to predict the bottom 3, and I want you to predict the winner of the Premier League, because we can now, because we're in the Premier League, and I'm guessing we're not going to be anywhere near that. Scotch Bonnet, you go first.
Bottom 3, I'm going to go with Brentford, Sunderland, and Burnley. Brentford.
Can I just say, I don't want this to sound like I'm copying Jim, but genuinely Brentford was going to be the one. I think we can't say the Leeds are going to go down, can we? But I think it'll be Sunderland, Burnley. I think a guarantee, because I think obviously Sunderland's flashing a bit of cash, but they need to seriously strengthen the whole team, don't they? Because I think last season Leeds finished 20 odd points ahead of them, which shows the golfing class there. So yeah, Sunderland, Burnley, because I don't think Burnley are going to have the spending power they need. And I would say one of Brentford or Wolves.
Yeah, Wolves, funnily enough, was the other one, but I think they'll be okay. I've just got a feeling with Brentford.
I think, yeah, the challenge that Brentford have got is obviously they lost Thomas Frank after all that stability. And Boomer looks like he's going to go. You think we're going to lose some good players. And that's the problem that happens, is when you build a little bit of a solid Premier League team, there's still another 12, 15 Premier League clubs above you that can come in and take your best players. And if you lose 2 or 3 in your manager, then you're in a bit of bother. Samba.
I'll just chuck out a curveball as well, and then you guys can chuck out a curveball.
As long as it's not my curveball.
Well, my curveball for relegation is West Ham as well. They the teeth this year, didn't they? Because
so my 3, Burnley, Leeds United. I can be pessimistic, can't I? And then I'm still going to hope that we don't get relegated. And you bullshit. You must think we're going to finish somewhere down there. And I think Sunderland are going to be fine. I don't know. Shows how much I know. And I think Nottingham Forest might be pulled into it, because they've got European football. They haven't got the strongest of teams. I know everyone says they did well last season, but in reality, they were pretty, I wouldn't say lucky. They did well last season, but the European football, alongside losing some of their best players, I feel like, and I'm not sure they're in the strongest of financial positions after what they've done. So I wouldn't be surprised seeing them down there.
I think the big thing with that, you could be right with that. 'Cause I think what we're going to see this season in the Prem is we're going to see a completely different league. So the league that's just gone, we saw the likes of Scum down there, and any other season they would have potentially dropped. The quality of the bottom 3 was absolutely dreadful. And actually, and this is a bit controversial, I've said this, I like to do a bit of fishing in my pastime online. And I've done a little bit of fishing and said that at the top of the Premier League, in terms of winning the league last season, it was very fucking boring. Very boring. Liverpool had won the league way before the season had ended. I think next season, what unfortunately we'll see the likes of Scum jump back up the league. We're probably going to see the usual top 6 figure its way back out to what we're normally used to seeing. Likes of Spurs being back up there, strength again, better team. And that brings the likes of Forest back towards the middle of the pack and then towards the bottom of the pack. And I think it's going to be a lot more of a usual season this year. So you could be right, yeah.
My optimism for Leeds will change as and when we sign some randomer that I've never heard of, but has a good head of hair. So yeah, I'm sure once we get some signings in, I'll be like, yeah, we're going to win the league. Do you want to hazard a guess at the winner of the league?
Yeah, I think
TC?
back Liverpool.
Yeah,
agreed. I think that, refusing to sell the best players. I know Diaz and Bayern Munich came in for him and they just outright rejected it and they've signed Wirtz and some real top talent in Europe, and it looks like they're just strengthening, not losing any key players, then really have got it together, and I could see them kicking on and winning the league again.
Yeah, I think the City rebuild is still not going to be quite there this season. There will be a lot closer, but they're in the Club World Cup as well now. They're not going to have that big of a break for the start of the season. I know they've just been eliminated against a team from Saudi, right?
Yeah,
which it says a lot with where they're at right now. So yeah, I think Liverpool.
I'm not gonna say they're gonna win the league, but I think Chelsea might do well this season. They've had lots of obviously young players bought in for hundreds of millions of pounds, and they've got to come good at some point, or they're going to look a little bit stupid. I don't think I'm going to be very popular. I said Leeds are going to get relegated and Chelsea are going to come to the top. So yeah.
Yeah, if Sam's
anything
not
else,
if Sam's not on next week's podcast, he's been murdered.
or I can't stop shitting and I've been admitted to hospital on a drip. We shall see. I don't feel like we could end it there. Anything else you guys want to cover? Go on, Jim. Save us.
I think we should stick our necks out for the final bit and just do a final league position for Leeds. And I'll go first. I think we're going to be around 14th.
Wow. 17th.
I think between 13th and 19th.
You just said we're going to get relegated, though.
Yeah, well, you see, I'm already a bit more optimistic. We're not going to finish bottom. That's my prediction.
Yeah, Burnley will finish bottom.
Cool. Right, that's us done for this week. Thanks for listening to the Falling Apart podcast. If you've enjoyed it, or even if you haven't, give us a follow and drop us a message on X. Jim?
Falling Apart Pod.
That's at Falling Apart Pod. We will see you next time.
Bye.